starting now. We want to be respectful with everyone's time. I know everyone is busy. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Alejandra Sertuche, and I'm the CEO and founder of Enflux. And today we're here to talk about streamlining the self-assessment process, specifically for physician assistant programs. Let me click here. But before we start, we want to go through some housekeeping items. So all the participants are muted. And please use the Zoom webinar to ask any questions. I'll make sure that I'm queuing all the questions so that we can address them at the end of the session. The webinar is going to be recording, so it's going to be available after this session. And please let us know in the chat. We want to make sure that you can chat with us or in the QA. Let us know where you're visiting us from, what program, and what program are you visiting us from, and what where are you from? Just want to make sure everything is working. Wonderful. And make sure everyone can see it. See, perfect. Amory and Henry School of Health Sciences. Thank you. Wingate University. Awesome. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Everything is working. Excellent. So as I mentioned, I'm Ale, and I'm the founder and CEO. And today I'm thrilled to have special guests with us from the PA program at Wingate University. We have David Wiel from Program Director and Rebecca Boeschel, Associate Program Director. And they are here to share their insights on ongoing self-assessment and accreditation processes. And thank you both for joining us today. We're thrilled to have you here and excited to hear your insights. Without further ado, we're going to start our session. In today's session, we're going to talk about the importance of ongoing self-assessment, the 4 key elements of analysis, and how Enflux can help you centralize that data that you're collecting in different systems so that we can provide you with the analysis and the reporting that you need for the ongoing self-assessment. And in addition, if you're doing all of these things, how can we help you improve the self-assessment process and prepare for accreditation? Just a quick overview for those that don't know who we are. Enflux is the first decision support system in higher education. We work primarily with health science programs. We're across 13 disciplines, one of them being physician assistant programs. And what we do is that we automatically centralize all your data in a single database. We give you out-of-the-box reporting so that you can utilize for ongoing assessment, accreditation, identifying students at risk, so that you can make better decisions. And if you make better decisions, or while you're making decisions, you can document the decisions, track them, and evaluate them all in one system. So that's who we are at Enflux. So accreditation and self-study. We all know that it's extremely important for PA programs and for any kind of program. But why? Because it helps us identify areas of strength and weaknesses. It has to be an ongoing process. And we need to document what we're doing, those activities, because if we're doing these things, then we can meet or exceed the accreditation standards. If we don't, then these are the things that are happening. I went through the accreditation actions, and we see that more and more schools are getting notice of actions or citations. In March of 2021, there was more schools on probation than in March of 2022. We're still waiting for the September data, but it was insightful to see that even though we had more in 2021 than in 2022, that the common citations were standard B4.01 and C1 and C1.01 and .02. So even though there were less schools on probation, there were more citations on these standards. And just a reminder, standard B4.01, it's all about having a process in place to identify students at risk on time so that you can help them. And then standard 1.01 and .02 is about defining that ongoing self-assessment process. And then the other one is about implementing that assessment process. So it was something insightful to see that it seems like the accreditors are paying more attention to this, but the schools are also struggling. And it might be because we have so much data every day that is hard to keep up with these activities. So for instance, David, we're going to talk about early identification, right? The standard B4.01.
Yes, I think Becky's going to take this one. One quick point I will make, if you look at those citations, and Becky's going to talk about this, it's not that they weren't doing things in B4.01. It's not that programs weren't complying with standard one, the C standards as well. It's evidence. So if you look at that term there, lacked evidence of. So it's one thing to do it. It's number two to have evidence or to show that. And so Becky can talk more about that.
All right. Hi, everybody. I want to lead in with the fact that we found Enflux useful in two main areas. One is that early identification of students at risk, and also for data aggregation for self-study, which we have coming up pretty soon in our particular program. So we're particularly focused on this right now. The other thing I'd like to say why Enflux is important to me in three ways. As an advisor, I am an advisor to select students in our program in each cohort. I'm a course coordinator. I do teach in the curriculum, and also in my role as associate program director, I'm, to use a favorite phrase of Dr. Wiel, I'm sort of an eye in the sky over the didactic courses. So one of the things that we felt like we were doing pretty well at the beginning before we joined with Enflux is to identify students at risk. And we were being able, you know, we had inclinations that a student might be in trouble, and we were actually able to correlate some of our courses in the first semester to eventual success in the program and even PANCE success. The challenge was, and you all know this, you know that some students present very early and you know, unbeknownst to what appeared in the CASPA application, you can see that they're going to struggle. But occasionally, again, you will have a student be under the radar, a student that's not necessarily failing exams, but comes to our attention a little bit too late. And so an example of a miss prior to Enflux would be, again, that student who had not failed any exams, who hadn't met our criteria for meeting with an instructor or remediating an exam or an assignment, basically who was under our radar. And meanwhile, these students, again, not very many, thankfully, in our program, but these students were hovering in these didactic courses in that high C, low B range, and then did poorly on finals, resulting in final grades of C in one semester. And we have a policy of dismissal with 3 final grades of C in one semester. So it became apparent to us how important it is to identify and recognize and help these students as early as possible. The other thing I just wanted to mention quickly before we go on is that Enflux houses a great deal of our data. So we use ExamSoft. We use Canvas. So we have Canvas quizzes, ExamSoft exams. And we've also shared with Enflux our PACRAT 1 and 2 data, our end of rotation exam data, and also our PANCE data. So we are housing all of this important data in the single place.
I just had some notes on here to help guide folks in their self-study. So what the ARC does not want to see is raw data. So you export your reports from Exam Driver or from your PANCE dashboard or whatever it may be. They want to see aggregate data and how that data correlates across the curriculum, across your program. So they're looking for trends and not just singular, hey, we didn't do good in pulmonary on the PANCE and here's what we want to do about it. They want you to put that next to your PACRAT data, put that next to your didactic data, put that next to your EOR and your EOC data, and see what kind of picture that paints. And that's true analysis that drives conclusions, right? One of the other pitfalls is that we just do summary statements of our data, and ARC is pretty good to pick up on that they're not looking for a summary statement. What trends do you see? What correlations do you see to derive those action plans eventually? So they want that data to be coherent and not scattered. They want it to be aggregate data. And that's one of the things that Enflux helps us do. When Becky talks about the two greatest things or two greatest benefits we've seen so far early in our relationship with Enflux, it's early identification and aggregation of data and getting stuff to one place so we get a good eye in the sky picture that Becky talked about. And then, of course, just the other nugget, if you do make a modification, if there is an action plan that occurs or a modification to your curriculum from that data analysis, then you want to save those modifications because that'll be part of your self-study report as well. The other hurdle we found is that, well, this is almost every program, is that we have a lot of data. It just is siloed, right? So our pre-matriculation data lives in our admissions department. Our course data lives in our learning management, whether it's Canvas or Blackboard or Moodle or wherever it may be. Advisement data can be scattered just about anywhere. Our didactic data is with our APD or our director of didactic education, and clinical data may be with your clinical coordinators, your director of clinical education, and then who's even looking at your PANCE data? Is it just your program leadership? Which makes trending across the curriculum and aggregating that data incredibly difficult. It all gets exported in a different format. It all needs different login information. It all is in a completely different format. So how can we pull that all together to get that picture right there on one screen? And Enflux has allowed us to do that. And also, when you have everything in one place, your PANCE, your PACRAT, your EOC, your didactic, whatever your LMS grading in there too, we can identify things earlier and earlier and earlier. So we're not surprised on PACRAT 2. We're not surprised at EOC. We're not surprised at PANCE. It should start painting a picture that we already know is what it's going to look like. So this is directly out of the self-study report, and I tried to highlight things. I'm not going to read you the 4 key elements, but the first one is collection. So are you collecting the data? I think most programs do this well. If PA programs are good at any of the 4 elements, this is the one we're good at. What do we do with it afterwards is where the problem happens. So we take that data, aggregate it, and we start to look for those correlations and trends. And that's the second step they're looking for. When you see a correlation, when you see a trend, when it starts to paint a picture of, hey, this is trending down, this is trending up, or this came out of nowhere, how has that happened? That drives the application of those results, and we develop some conclusions, right? So that means this. And then from whatever that conclusion may be, we develop an action plan. And really, ARC wants to see you link the first step to the second step to the third step to the fourth, and then we kind of rinse and repeat and go back to the first one. All that can be done through Enflux in the form of action plans that I think Becky will talk a little bit about on the student side, but action plans can be just about anything, and she'll mention that too. Becky, you want to start these ones?
Yes. So again, here's the self-assessment process that we are all obligated to go through. And these are the highlighted in the purple are what we find Enflux can help us with. The effectiveness of our didactic curriculum, the effectiveness of the clinical curriculum, the preparation of graduates to achieve program-defined competencies. Of course, that's going to depend on some excellent mapping, which we can talk about that Enflux allows you to do. PANCE performance and success in meeting the program's goals. And again, the ongoing self-assessment involves collecting the data, analyzing the data, and applying those results, leading to conclusions. And I just wanted to mention a little bit about the action plans. These action plans, especially if you're talking about a student at risk, these action plans can, whoever is creating the action plan, maybe it's the course coordinator, maybe it's myself as associate director. We can distribute the action plans to all the people that need to know, and we are also held to account to follow up on those action plans. And I know there is a tendency to create the action plan, but not follow up and say, the results of that action plan. And Enflux has a way to keep that tracking all in a timely way and keep it all in one place.
So C.1.03 is really your bulk of your self-study. 1.01 says what you need to do, what steps need to take place. C1.02 clarifies with those four key elements of data analysis. And then C1.03 is really your self-study report. It wants you to accurately and succinctly document that process. And again, it's that documentation piece, that evidence piece that is often missing, and then applying that to results, so your self-assessment. So they give us some guidelines. They want tabular display, cohort to cohort, year to year. Again, big picture, longitudinal analysis of whatever we're looking at, whether it's didactic data, clinical data, PANCE performance, whatever it may be. And then did that data and analysis justify your conclusion? And again, it's just an evidence piece, and those action plans should put that all together and demonstrate all of those. And then lastly, make sure you save those modifications, because that'll be a report as well.
And this is the Appendix 14C that you complete for the filling out the data for the effectiveness of the didactic curriculum. So again, the things that you're tracking and need to put in the appendix, this is the number of course grades of C or below for the various cohorts, the failure rate in each course, the remediation data, and it needs to be documented. So that could be didactic remediation without a course repeat, and that's what we use mostly. We don't allow repeating a course in our curriculum, but there would be that option if you did do such a thing, to have recording didactic remediation, including the course repeat. And then the reflection, not only just on the subjective sorts of grades and failure rates and remediation success or not success, but reflection on the student, the faculty, and the staff, hearing their perceptions about what's going on in the didactic curriculum. And I think that speaks to what David was talking about earlier, where your action plans might involve a student and having the student on a plan so they can improve their performance. But an action plan could also pertain to an instructor, or could pertain to a course coordinator. So it doesn't have to be limited just to student performance. And these are all the various narratives that would be a part of this appendix as well.
$14D is essentially the same. It just takes your didactic data. You have to do the same thing for the clinical data. So grades below C, your failure rates, your remediation process. And again, it can be housed inside. You can take screenshots of your data, your trending or whatever it may be, individual student or course data. It takes a screenshot, and then you create the action plan and you assign it to whomever you want to assign it to, whether it's a committee, whether it's a person, but now it lives, right? It exists somewhere as your documentation of your evaluation of your effectiveness of either curriculum. And to Becky's point earlier, the accountability piece is important too. Put a due date on it. I can create an action plan, I can send it to Becky, and I can say I need this by Monday. And so we know that it closes this loop, and it wasn't forgotten about, which we all know can often happen. Competencies is another one. Becky is our APD and really stresses the mapping of our courses, right? So any question you write in ExamSoft, any learning outcome or instructional objectives has to be mapped to whether it's standards or content area, task area, but also your program defined competencies. All that can be done in Enflux as well. So we can run reports on specific competencies and how many times it was evaluated. And so trending that over time is just as critical as any other course, because you'll have to do Appendix E. And really the one biggest one here is the evaluation of the curriculum's ability to prepare them to achieve those competencies. And then you tie that into your summative evaluation at the end, and there's your evidence. But this takes quality mapping, and Enflux can walk you through mapping just about anything. In fact, we found things that we didn't know we could map before, and now we can. This is the big one. This is probably where I'll take over the conversation a little bit, but we know PANCE performance matters a lot, especially to newer developing programs that really want to throw up a big number and not be on the ARC's radar. It's not as simple as our once a year, post a year, 5-year PANCE performance rate, right? They want you to take a deep dive into how your content areas, your task areas, and what got you to the number. Even if it's 100% PANCE pass rate, there's still weaknesses and there's still strengths within that data. And so they want you to take a look at that PANCE data and then reflect back on the curriculum, on the summative, on those competencies, on didactic, on clinical, on attrition, everything else that you can house inside Enflux. So it's not just a summary statement of our students scored a 78 on pulmonology and the national average was 75. That's not what they're looking for. That's a summary statement. So really evaluate that data. How does it correlate to PACRAT 1? How does it correlate to PACRAT 2? How does it correlate to your EORs and EOCs? Or whatever data you have available, but they want you to look for those trends and identify those things a little bit earlier. Again, they don't want raw data, so looking for trends, making sure we're not siloed, and looking to what data does correlate with PANCE success. Is it your ClinMed 1 course? Your pulmonary module in ClinMed 1 has the highest correlation to PANCE success. Maybe you'll find that, but housing it all in one place to see that and to paint that picture is critically important. It also allows, well, Enflux allows us to take a look at our PANCE data a little bit differently, and we found had a profound effect on how we look at our PANCE reports. And I cut an example out. This is real data. I'm sharing, I'm being vulnerable here and sharing data with you from a PANCE report. But if I run the PANCE report for a cohort and it says that our mean score is 75%, and the mean of all programs is 75%, I'm probably not going to call this a weakness. I'm probably not going to call this a strength. I'm going to look somewhere else, right? So of all those content areas and task areas, I may not even mention pulmonology or to take a deeper dive unless something pulls me to do that, right? And this is what Enflux has allowed us to do, to have a different lens to look at this data. And I'll show you on this next slide that we're looking at the exact same data. And through Enflux, I can see that like 86 to 88%, I blurred it out so I didn't share too much, but the vast majority of our students scored below the mean in the area of pulmonology. So you may think, how is that possible if we're 75 and 75? And it's this rock star effect, right? I got some rock stars in this class that threw up a 90 whatever percent in it. These guys were just barely below the mean, but it's a real big problem that 80 something percent of our class scored below the mean. That's a weakness. So this is what fills your narrative in that report, right? It's not just that snapshot of your PANCE performance. It's, hey, we looked at this and we looked at it deep. And then I take this and I go back and say, hey, I think we did about national average on PACRAT 1. Wonder how many were below the mean. I think we did pretty good on EOC. I wonder how many were below the mean. And it may paint a completely different picture that doesn't show itself until you get to PANCE and until you start to have, oh, 2 or 3 folks failed. Well, that's because pulmonary, which is a huge component of the PANCE, the vast majority of your class scored below the mean. And we may never ever see it that way unless you look at it differently, and Enflux allows you to do that. And Becky, I think we pulled out just a few other standards that may help. Obviously, we're talking about self-study, but there are some other places where Enflux has benefited us, and I think you're going to cover those.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we do have leadership that has the eye in the sky, but we also have advisors. We also have course coordinators, and we are giving our faculty access to Enflux as well. And again, this is really important that they are the ones that are doing the curriculum mapping. They're doing their course mapping, their exam mapping, and they have to have a buy-in to this as well. So principal, faculty, and the program director all need to be involved in evaluating student performance, the advisory role, and also designing, implementing, coordinating, and evaluating the curriculum. And we feel like being able to utilize this platform, all the core faculty with access enables them to better understand the importance of doing things right on the front end so you can have good data on the back end. And the other thing I wanted to mention about curriculum mapping or course mapping is that Enflux allows us to see gaps in our mapping. I had an endocrine exam just this week in pathophysiology, and I was able to, before I even submitted my exam, I was able to look at the mapping features that are evident and see if I missed anything. Did I map everything according to a PANCE task area? We have required mapping categories. Did I hit all of those before the exam is even administered? So it's an important check on your techniques. And again, having these documents all in one place is just a tremendous time saver. And I think, again, the quality of our self-study, I predict, will be much better because we're able to get to the data easily and manipulate it as well. And I think this just points to the other standard that occasionally has citations, more than occasionally, that we must conduct these frequent, objective, documented evaluations, and they must be timely. And we must identify those students who are vulnerable and at risk. And again, we can set our own thresholds for what we consider at risk and vulnerable. And it helps us identify those students way before they get that C at the end of the course. We also actually have a distance campus. So we have two campuses, our main campus and then one in Western North Carolina. And this is becoming immensely helpful when we have to, for our self-study, we have to compare campuses and document equivalency. So I was practicing a little bit with that this morning, looking at a course I teach, pathophysiology, and looking at it just in relation to campus performance. And oh my goodness, an instant report that would have taken me quite a long time to put together myself if I'd had to do that. So this is really a benefit to our particular setup here.
Yeah, I realize that the bulk of programs have a single campus, but when you're doing a self-study is already a monster on its own, but imagine having to take your self-study and essentially do it twice because you have to show how we compare between the two campuses. So it gives us a shortcut, a little jump start. When we look at our data, we can already look at it three ways, right? Overall, one campus and the other campus, or even if you had more. And then one thing I do, we talked about at risk a lot and B4.01 and identifying at risk. One of the cool things about Enflux is you decide what's at risk, right? We have a little slide bar and I can say scores below 75 scare me a little bit. Let's set that as our standard. Make it 80, make it 78, make it 64, whatever it may be based on where you're going to catch your outliers, where you've identified risk kind of takes place or lives. But you can set your different standard of what at risk is based on the data you're looking at. Which is nice because maybe if you're not catching anybody, you can turn it up a little bit and say who's in that bottom quartile that we need to be talking to. So the workability of it is super nice. I think I'll cover these last two, Becky. So we talked about how we can demonstrate 4.01. And again, the point of this slide is that the collection, the analysis, the conclusions, and the action plan, all four steps can be housed inside Enflux. So that evidence that it pulls from our PANCE, EOC, EOR, didactic data, whatever it may be, lives inside Enflux. When we aggregate that data, look for trends, we're using the Enflux software to look for those trends. When we do come up with an action plan, we create the action plan in Enflux, we send it to whomever we need to, put a timestamp on it or a due date on it, and it lives in Enflux. So it's nice that we can keep all this in one place when currently we may be doing most of these things, but it's anywhere and everywhere. And the time of the self-study coming along is not the time to go data mining, especially if you've had faculty or staff turnover or there's different departments. Finding this information can be incredibly difficult. And if it's already there, then it's kind of a one-stop shop. And then I think Becky did point out your action plans don't always have to be about a student. They commonly are. Timmy is not doing great in my class. I see he's at risk in 2 others. I can send an action plan to his advisor and have that demonstrated. But it can also be curricular in nature too. If we're seeing that something isn't mapped correctly, we went through an entire course and one of the learning objectives was never tested on once. That's an action plan, right? If you're going to make it a course outcome or an instructional objective and map it, you need to test on what you're teaching, right? And so those dashboards identify those things quick. We either need to write some more test questions or we need to change our outcomes. So it identifies that well. And then this is just kind of a closing statement here on how it's benefited us, or what I see with other programs as well, is that we generally do a good job of self-assessment. We lack the evidence, and that's the hard part. ARC doesn't want to hear that you're doing a great job at X, Y, and Z. They want show me that you're doing a great job. And so that evidence is one of the best things that Enflux does. I can print 100 action plans if we need to, or whatever data set they be looking at. And if programs do things well, they kind of taper off through those 4 steps. So that first step of data analysis, maybe we do really well. Are we analyzing it? Are we noticing trends? Are we drawing conclusions? And then are we creating action plans? And that's where our evidence tapers off, and maybe our effort tapers off as well. So we need to hold ourselves accountable to all 4 steps of that data analysis.
Thank you so much for the insightful information. It's wonderful to hear how Enflux is helping you not just keep up with the good job, but also have that evidence in your fingertips, like right there. Also being able to save you time, because that's our goal. We want to save you time. And we just heard from a customer that sent us a chat saying, like, we just implemented Enflux and the ability to aggregate and analyze data has improved exponentially. Like, now people are thinking more, how do I go the extra mile and do more like research? And how can I do with the data? Because they have more time to do that instead of trying to put a spreadsheet together for an accreditation kind of evidence report. It also helps with different campuses. That's an excellent point. We have multiple programs, not only PA, but like pharmacy and nursing programs that have multiple campuses. And David, like you said, they have to do accreditation like 2-3 times because they need to prove that the quality of education is the same across all the campuses. So Enflux allows them to just say, show me the curriculum for this year, and seeing campus A, B, and C all one side by side, so they can provide that information. But now I want to show everybody a quick demo so that they can see when we were talking about action plans. What do we mean by action plans? What does it look like? So as I mentioned, what we do at Enflux is that we centralize all your data in one place. So when you log in, you're seeing a lot of different dashboards because we work with multiple disciplines. But when you log in, the beauty of it is that as a new customer, you get all of these reports with historical data in it. So the student report card brings your end of curriculum, end of rotation, your PAC-RAD, your PANCE, all in one view. And for now, we're running just one correlation analysis, but there's more coming where we have the PAC-RAD against the PANCE and trying to get that equation that lets us know what's the relationship between those two. The p-value is 0.001. It's strong, although this is demo data. But in here, you can quickly see who are the students that failed, or what does a student need on the PAC-RAD, like for your program, because this model is for your program. What do students need to get on the PAC-RAD so that they can pass the PANCE, right? And for this program is right in there, in here or here. So then from there, we provide a one view of one student. So in here, we're looking at just one student at a time, where you can see everything in one place: the PAC-RAD, the PANCE, end of curriculum, end of rotation. Of course, if the student hasn't taken the PANCE, they wouldn't be able to see the PANCE in here. So that's what we do at Enflux. Just quickly, I invite you to schedule a demo with us if you want to learn more. We bring years of data. Some programs have about 4 years of data in our system, and they get all of that within 1 or 2 weeks. So that's the immediate return investment of implementing Enflux. It doesn't take months or years to obtain these reports. And if you find something odd, like identifying a student at risk, you can take action. You can document that information in here. So this is where you can say student at risk. And it's hard to type and talk at the same time, but maybe data-driven decision is that we're going to host a session with the student. We're going to have a meeting. The objective is to make sure that the student is successful on passing the board exam and is getting mastery on competencies. You can hold someone accountable. Maybe you're assigning the student to the mentor. You give them a deadline, you select the student. And in here, this is where you can quickly align your decisions to courses, committees. Maybe you have something about student retention or assessment. You can also, this is pharmacy standards because it's demo data, but imagine that you are also tying it to your accreditation RPA standards and anything else that you would like to have in an action plan. All of our action plans, like a new system, a good system is when you click save, it becomes like a project management tool that is not only documenting everything, but it takes a screenshot of the data. So everything is well stored and centralized. Dr. Casey is going to get an email notification letting her or him know that this action plan was assigned with this deadline with a direct link to the action plan and the data. They can submit comments. They can add milestones if they want to split the action plan. They can add attachments. And in addition, they can come in and close the action plan and say, we met with the student, we met our goal. All of our action plans, because we understand that you need access to them, can be downloaded as a PDF. So in here, you can quickly have access to your PDF that is documenting everything and with a screenshot of the dashboard. And at any point in time, you can run an aggregated PDF report where you can say, show me everything that we did for John Smith. So that way, if the student is appealing a school decision or program decision, you can get one PDF with all the different interventions that you had with the student. That's just for students, but you can have the same information for curriculum evaluation. And remember, the bad thing about data is trash in, trash out. So we need to make sure that we're doing a good job at setting up our systems. But I do have exciting news to share with everybody. In, I think, less than a month, we're going to start releasing a system that is going to help you. It's an artificial intelligence system that is going to identify the Bloom's taxonomy on course learning outcomes, course objectives, or exams of items or exam items. So that way you don't have to like go, is it level 1, 2, 3, 4? The system does it for you. And the next one that we're already testing is the PANCE blueprint. So we're going to be able to process your data and identify the PANCE blueprint on your items. In case faculty forgot to tag questions, then we can quickly just run your data and get you the results for that. It's still in testing mode, but those are the exciting things because we understand the faculty are busy. It relies on someone to manually go and tag the questions. So we want to automate as much as possible of that so that you can get this view where you can see how the students are performing on the competencies across time and is directly linked to the data and exams so that you can see what the question looks like and what's the quality of the question based on the psychometric analysis. Wonderful. So with that, let me check. We have one question. How much does this system cost? I apologize. We haven't talked about pricing. We can definitely have a session with you and talk about that. The way it works is primarily by what data points do you want to bring into the system and how many students are we talking about and how many users you want to have in the platform. But the two drivers is the data points and the number of students. And we can definitely provide, so it depends on the program. We can definitely provide a quote for that. Wonderful. Perfect. So, David and Becky, before you had Enflux, how were you looking at all of this data? What was some of the process that you had in place?
I think every program director takes a look at PANCE data, right? I don't think we were looking at it the right way, or not looking at the best way, I would say. Enough to meet the standard, maybe, but not in the best interest of our program, which is kind of the purpose of that standard, right? And I think, but it's siloed, right? So I was pretty much the only one looking at PANCE data, and I would share that with faculty at faculty staff meetings. Becky was mainly looking at curricular data and outcomes data, and she would share that with her committee but again, siloed, kind of in separate places. And then many of the things that we can start doing with action plans were just hallway conversations. Hey, Bobby's not doing great in my class. Well, he's not doing great in mine either. Why don't we see if we get him set up with a success coach or with tutoring or whatever? And then poof, that's gone away. That conversation never happened when it comes to accreditation, right? And so now you can say, I'm going to send you an action plan on so-and-so, because it looks like he's struggling in both our classes. And so, like many programs, we were doing it, but not doing it well or as well as we can, especially with those middle two stages of data analysis. But having that evidence, I think, is the biggest thing. On the advising teaching side, Becky, I think we did a really good job of that, but one faculty is using one form, another faculty is using another form, one course director is saving that data, one advisor has all his or her advisees. And so this gives us an opportunity to have it all in one place. So it's easily searchable, findable. And when those difficult decisions or conversations do come, we can pull up all that corresponding action plans.
That's wonderful. One of the things I have heard from multiple programs is that they were able to see the data in a different way. And I wonder if it's also because when you're looking at Enflux or the dashboards in Enflux, you don't come tired from crunching numbers in Excel spreadsheets, looking at the raw data, trying to, a lot of people spend a lot of time creating that report. Then by the time that you get to look at the data, at the report, you're like, okay, now let's think about the insights. And your mind might be burned by that time, right?
Right. And who's ever PANCE data you were evaluating has graduated and is now a preceptor for your program. They're gone by the time you figure it out. So making real action and real change early has been a big one. And you can make it as sensitive as you want. You can pick up, what does that risk mean to you? Becky, we're going to say something else. Do you feel like it's changed for us?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we have monthly faculty meetings, and before Enflux, I would spend the good part of the day before or the morning of just going through the Canvas gradebook and looking at all the courses and getting an idea of who was struggling just by looking at the gradebook. So I could present that at faculty meeting. And now that time is cut down to a matter of minutes, actually, where I can pull up data for that particular month and update people on who's vulnerable by our standard, who's vulnerable in particular courses, who's at risk in particular courses. So it has really saved time and honestly to be able to store those documents and store that as part of an action plan going forward has been a true time saver, and just a confidence that we're doing things the right way instead of just hoping that we're doing things the right way it means a lot.
That's wonderful. Are you talking about this report where you can quickly see the risk?
Right. So I could pull up for the whole didactic curriculum. I could look across the curriculum and see where students are. Where before we would, and we still want instructors to talk about their own classes. It's not like we're eliminating that, but I can provide that summary information at the beginning. And we identify these students much earlier, because again, we can set our own parameters for the threshold that we think we need to start watching people. Let's start watching people that are scoring high C's. Let's not wait till they score below 70.
Absolutely. It's like, let's catch them while they're still have time to improve their performance on the upcoming assessments. Because sometimes what happens is that by the time we're done manually processing all the data, you're meeting with the student to find out that the student has zero chance to pass the course already. Like they need 110 on the final exam. It's like, well, that's not possible, right? What are we going to do about that? So that's something that we are really committed to, so that you can have access to those insights right away, so that you can have early intervention with the student and help them out, give them a chance. So Enflux, and going back to one of our first slides, is we're committed to help you. It's academic intelligence, not only for program success, but for student success. If the program is successful, the students are successful. So thank you so much, David and Becky, for joining us today. Your information has been extremely insightful, and we're thankful that be working with you. We enjoy working with both of you, and it's awesome to hear how you're leveraging Enflux and that we are saving you time. That's our commitment. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having us, and I look forward to the places you're going to go too, right? So more coming, and make the product even better, which we're excited about.
Yes, there's more coming. I'm really excited about that. I can geek out all day about what we're doing behind the scenes. And I want to thank our attendees for staying with us and asking great questions. Please let us know if you have any questions. In the chat, we put a link. You can schedule a meeting with us at any time if you have questions about pricing, implementation, or if you want to learn more. Thank you so much. And it's almost Friday, so have a great weekend.